And those things, those roles are incredibly challenging because you have all of the responsibility and none of the control. And to be really brutally honest, CEOs will frequently put somebody in a director of that job or chief, sustainability officer or chief diversity officer or something like that, just so that when the CEO gets to a press conference and someone asks a tough question about sustainability, he can just punt that question to the chief sustainability officer and he doesn't have to deal with that question.
Hi everyone, Adam Karnama is here. I'm back with the next session of my podcast, and today I have the pleasure to have Chris Williams with me. He is senior executive from the corporate world. He's been working long in the corporate world, but now he's bringing his invaluable experience to the larger audience basically and coaching leaders in different organizations. So I give some words about you yourself, Chris, to introduce yourself and tell a bit about yourself. And we go to the questions that I'm super excited to discuss them with you.
Well, Adam, thank you again for having me today. It's great.
Nice.
I'm really happy to talk to you. For your audience's benefit, I've been in the working world for something like 45 years now in the corporate world. I've held a variety of jobs. I began in the tech world as a programmer and software developer. I then moved to develop a software package that was called Fox Pro that was purchased by Microsoft in the early 90s. And I spent the better part of the 90s at Microsoft, running a wide variety of projects from small products to releasing. I was the founding father of the Visual Studio product line that was created under my watch. So the Visual Studio product began when I assembled a team of people to coalesce 5 different products into one. I then was offered a really unique opportunity to move from the software development side into the human resources side and moved into HR because I've always been fascinated with people and organizations and how they function and how they work. I moved into a senior HR role responsible for HR for about a third of the company. And then one day, my boss, who was the VP of HR at the time, walked into my office and said, "Remember when you applied for this job, you said one day you wanted my job?" And I said, "Well, everybody says that. Where do you want to be in 5 years?" "Well, I'd like to have your job." Well, he said, "How about Thursday?" And it turns out that Steve Ballmer was taking over Microsoft from Bill Gates at the time, and Steve was not fond of my predecessor, but very much liked me, and so I became VP of HR for all of Microsoft, which was, at the time, it was 30-something thousand employees in 160 locations around the world. My signature was on $2.2 billion a year of paychecks. And so I shared a wall with Steve Ballmer. So I was working closely with him as he became CEO of Microsoft. And I did that for a while and then retired to spend some time with my kids. And after doing that for a while, I ended up realizing that I really wanted to give back to the business and organization community. And so I've been doing counseling and coaching of executives for a number of years. And during the pandemic, I decided to take to social media, which was very much foreign turf for me, but ended up creating quite a following across a number of areas to this moment right now. For example, I have 250 some odd thousand followers on TikTok, which is not a platform I thought I'd end up being on. And that has led me to have a broad access to around the world. So I've picked up clients from all around the world. I've had clients as New Zealand and Dubai, and I have 2 current clients in Finland, who are completely unrelated to each other, which was completely unexpected to me. I have clients in London, and I had one for a short time in Brazil. So I've had clients from all around the world, and it's been just absolutely fascinating. And today I am focused now on really working on the most underserved level of management assistance, where I focus on directors, vice presidents, that sort of middle management area, the senior middle management area, which There's all kinds of people who help Manager 101, and there's all kinds of people to help your CEO, but there's not a lot of people out there working to help that middle area, that area that really gets to be a tough job, the directors and vice presidents and general managers, and that area where you've got layers of people below you and layers of people on top of you, and it makes it really hard.
Exactly.
That's what I'm doing today.
Exciting. I mean, it's pleasure to have you, Chris. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan. Basically, I follow you on Instagram. I mean, not probably TikTok, but I have to find you on TikTok as well. But on Instagram, I see, wow, those videos are really something that, I mean, from my corporate experience, I see those really connected to my sort of real life experiences. And then your insights from what you did, and then the way that you develop your career, I think is pretty invaluable for different levels of the managers and those that they want to push their careers in different levels. But then as you mentioned that this level VP or director level, you said that they are a bit underserved, and then yeah, there are some people that they on the more executive levels that they are pushing them in delivering, and there are a lot of sort of maybe lower level managers that they expect from them and they want extra support on that. I mean, can you sort of see what is your experience working with those, and then why do you see that these levels are a bit underserved, and can you tell us more about that?
Well, the thing that I've noticed repeatedly is that when you're an individual contributor, there's a lot of attention and focus on exactly what you do day to day and getting you better. And there's oftentimes training and help and support available to get better at whether it's programming or any kind of sort of execution level stuff that happens. You can find training, and the companies tend to be pretty good at that, largely because there's a lot of numbers in that. They also, as you get promoted to be a manager, many people who get promoted to be a supervisor, frontline supervisor, they've got no experience in management. They've been an individual contributor. They get promoted to that job, and companies realize that they need some kind of training and support. And so there's a number of companies that are fairly large companies are usually pretty adept at doing Manager 101. There are also a lot of I have friends in the consulting world who focus on that Manager 101 level, that first level manager. You know, this is your first job as a supervisor. Here's the things you need to know about how to do that. From the other direction, if you're a CEO or something like that, you know, you can't turn on LinkedIn without hundreds and hundreds of people who want to be a CEO coach, right? And then of course you've got McKinsey and Bain and all the big consulting firms who are there to help coach the CEOs. And so there's a lot of people who are doing one-on-one coaching, helping those CEOs. But in that middle band, once you become a manager and a manager of managers, that level is where the job gets really complicated, but there's not a lot of support. And that is because HR teams often don't understand those jobs very well. There aren't people in HR who have held those kinds of jobs, so they don't understand how to do it very well. It's also jobs that are very difficult to advise and counsel on. It's really hard to sort of create a course about how to do that job, because so many of the issues are very specific to the role that you're in. It varies by the industry that you're in, by the company that you're in, by the management style that is in the organization. Each of those jobs in that middle range where you're getting pressure from above to get the results and get all kinds of things done, and you're getting pressure from below by your employees who want more resources or want something to change or want you to do this or do that. That job in the middle, there's little outside support for it. It's difficult for people to figure out how to do that outside support. And the most effective way to do that outside support tends to be one-on-one coaching, because they don't want to, you can't do a group coaching session with people who are senior managers at a company. They're not going to want to share that information. They're not going to want to expose their vulnerabilities to a group of unknown people around them. The issues are often very complex and have to do with their own employees who they can't talk about or share about. So it's a really challenging area to learn how to be better at. And so that's where my videos are largely focused at that range of managers. And that's what my consulting work is entirely focused on. That's who my clients are, is middle managers, directors, VPs, general managers, people who want to be in the C-suite, but they don't know how to get there, that kind of thing.
That type of, yes. I mean, I really connect because, I mean, a lot of roles that I took in the corporate world are there in that level, like VP or director level. And then these are normally I take sustainability lead roles in different organizations. And those, I mean, type of challenges that you're mentioning are basically what I deal with day-to-day basis. I think, yeah, I see that there are a lot of sort of people that I need to coach, basically myself, and there are a lot of expectation coming on top from me. And then that's managing those environments with a lot of sort of people management, a lot of change management within the organization that has been challenging. But then, I mean, my question maybe connects a bit to the sustainability roles or mainly more global or central functions that one would take in the organization. And then in your view, how do they are they different from a line role in the organizations? And then what is it that you think that would be the recipe for the success, basically? I know that that would be a bit difficult, but what are your experiences can tell us?
Well, one of the first bigger roles I took when I was at Microsoft, I was managing the C++ team, which was the organization that developed a compiler that is used throughout the world. But I moved into a role that was one of those cross-organization roles. So I was responsible for best practices, software development best practices across the entire corporation. So my objective was to talk to each and every single one of the product teams across the organization and try and convince them better ways to do software development. And it was almost exactly like a sustainability kind of role or a diversity kind of role or any of those kinds of roles that are sort of cross the organization, but are trying to get sort of global corporate-wide missions done. And those roles are incredibly challenging because you have all of the responsibility and none of the control. And to be really brutally honest, CEOs will frequently put somebody in a director of that job or chief, sustainability officer or chief diversity officer or something like that, just so that when the CEO gets to a press conference and someone asks a tough question about sustainability, he can just punt that question to the chief sustainability officer and he doesn't have to deal with that question, right?
I've dealt with those a lot in my career. Yes, exactly.
Exactly. But the problem you've got as the chief sustainability officer is you go to the line manager who's responsible for building some widget or doing something or other, and you say, you need to do this in a more sustainable way. Here's some ways you can do that. You could do it like this. It would be a much more sustainable product, and you should build it like that. And that line manager is more likely than not going to look at you with a sort of rolled eyes and furrowed brow and say, really, do you want me to ship this product? Do you want me to sell this thing? Or do you want me to be more sustainable? Take your pick. But I can tell you what, my performance bonus is based on selling this product, not on it being more sustainable. So, Mr. Sustainability, bye. I'm done with you, right? And so that's just these roles are incredibly challenging. And I work with a number of people who've been in those kinds of roles, and there's a bunch of ways you can work around that. My suggestions are that you work on things where you can help them and show them specific benefits. Show that line manager the specific benefits that you can do to get it done. You also have to help them do it. You can't just sort of say, here's your mandate. You have to say, how about if one of the members of my sustainability team comes and works with your people and sits with you and helps you develop the next more sustainable version or the next more whatever it is, helps you understand how to hire better, helps whatever it is that is the corporate goal. If you as the chief sustainability officer or whatever your cross title is, inject help into their organization to get that stuff done, they'll be much less fearful of it, much more willing to sort of participate and have something to do with it. But as you and I were talking when we talked before this podcast, the most important thing is that the company as a whole has to treat whatever this objective is as a company-wide mandate. So
Exactly.
that line manager needs to be held accountable for if your product is not sustainable, then you're going to get dinged. If it is more sustainable, you're going to get a bonus. Whatever it is, it has to rain down through the corporation in the line person's performance and benefits and judgment of success. It has to be done through the line. Some chief sustainability officer parachuting in and telling you what to do won't solve that kind of a problem.
Exactly. I mean, you're right to the point. You mentioned like all responsibility, no control, and that's exactly that type of the role. But injecting the help, yeah, I think that's super important to do that. But I've seen like fellow sustainability leads or those that are taking those more cross sort of organization roles, they tend to build their sort of team to be a sort of a big team of delivering on behalf of the business or the lines that they are responsible to deliver that. Do you see that is working, or the team should be more lean and smaller than in what do you mean probably from injecting the help? Is it like a team that you build to inject the help, or is it more guideline or support?
I worry if you build a parallel organization that is doing sustainability. If you're the chief sustainability officer, let's say, and you build an organization that is large and focused on sustainability and is doing sustainability work exclusively in your organization, that gives me, the line manager responsible for some other issue, the power to say, I don't really have to care about sustainability because it's his problem over there and they're building it and I don't need to worry. Great, cool. I love it. You guys handle sustainability. That's not my problem. Where in fact, that almost is never the effective way to get sustainability in the whole corporation. The way to get sustainability in the whole corporation is for every single manager who has something to do with a development of something or whatever it is, has to feel sustainability as an issue for them, not just for that guy over there who runs the sustainability group. It's got to be for them. And so I worry that if you create a large sustainability organization, you might be able to get something done, but you're probably first in line for cuts when things get tough. You're also a separate organization that is completely outside of the normal line of duty. So again, the CEO can point proudly, hey, we have this huge sustainability organization and it looks like they're getting something done. But as far as the line managers are concerned, they're just like, yeah, fine, that sustainability group was over there doing something. I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but they're over there doing it and more power to them. And I fully support sustainability by pointing my finger at those people over there who are doing it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you're right to the point. Yeah, I've seen a lot of like fellow sustainability directors and chief sustainability officers by building their larger team around themselves, they're not helping themselves basically.
Right.
So
It
that's the
feels good to have a
yeah,
big
it
team,
does.
and it also, again, it's one of those things where you can wave a flag and say, we are really doing sustainable work because I've got a team of 1,200 people here doing sustainability, right?
Exactly.
That's really cool, but it isn't building it into the organization. So what I ended up doing in my role, and I recommend that people who have these roles today do, is I recommend that what you do is create a bunch of sustainability consultants who will go into teams and help them figure out how to do it and how to make it work. And you guys should bring in the sustainability expertise and also teach them that it doesn't necessarily have to cost an arm and a leg to do these things. And here's how you do that. And these are the various things that you need to do to accomplish the sustainability goals that we have as a company. But if you can be that sort of outside consultant who comes in and puts somebody in each one of those organizations and helping them get things done, but who has a sustainability responsibility, you're going to get stuff injected into the entire organization rather than just in this one third party outside sustainability world.
Exactly. So when you have no control over a lot of responsibility, yes, you need
It's a
to.
nightmare.
Yeah, it
It's
is a
a nightmare.
nightmare. And then you need to inject the help. And injecting the help is like meant by developing more coaching and consulting the business to achieve the targets and achieve to the goals. And That's well said, basically.
The other thing that helps there is if your people who are going into those organizations can develop relationships in those organizations. You don't look like some sort of third-party nanny who is coming to teach them how to be sustainable. You look like somebody who's in there working on your problems with these people side by side. I'm trying to help you be more sustainable, right? It's
Exactly.
the relationships. One of the things that people, and we talked about this before, one of the things that I keep trying to make sure people understand is that business and organizations are almost entirely relational, right? You need to be paying attention to the individuals on the other side of the table. And as soon as it starts to look like you're talking this org against that org, it starts to sound like football teams arguing about are fighting on the battlefield. Whereas if it's talking about individuals, like I've got a sustainability guy who sits next to me all day and I know who they are and understand who they are, then I'm more likely to listen to them. But if it's just this big organization out there fighting for resources just like I'm fighting for resources, it becomes a battle. So that's why individual, connection and communication, individual knowledge and respect between organizations is incredibly important.
100%. Well said. And then I think that well connects to the sort of the next point that I want to bring and discuss it with you. When I watch your videos, I see a lot of sort of discussions that you can about people management and individualization in the way, I mean, you mentioned about the sort of treating your fellow sustainability leads that they work with you as an individual. And then also this individualization comes when you are leading people. So you lead a diverse type of set of people with many different backgrounds and then also many different interests in and then career goals and whatever sort of the way that makes them motivated as well. So, I mean, elaborate on your sort of thoughts around that and that angle of individualization in leading teams.
Well, one of the things that I try to make sure people understand again is that leading and managing people is about people first. It's not about managing. It's about people. And one of the things I try and point out to leaders all the time is if you think about the people on your team, whether you know them or not, whether they all look exactly alike or completely different, they all have very different life experiences, very different preferences. Take, for example, some people prefer feedback that is extremely direct, right? They prefer feedback that is, that you want to go to them and say, I need you to do this, why, and that, and please don't do it like this. This doesn't work, and don't ever do that again because that's a problem. Other people will at that, oh my gosh, that's, and what they want to hear is, hey, you're doing a great job. If you could just change it a little bit, it'd be better for all of us if you would just do that, right? It's just like some people prefer texts over email. Some people prefer phone calls over in-person meetings. Some people like Zoom. Some people only can meet with somebody in person. Some people like their preferences. They want to get a higher paycheck. Some people want more title. Some people want to have more time off. Some people want to have a better work-life balance. Some people are working for a retirement goal. Some people are working to get the highest job in the company they possibly can. Every single person who works on your team is different in so many dimensions. Their own personal situation. They might have kids at home that they're paying attention to. They might have a sick parent. So there's every single dimension that every single person on your team has that should, if you're a good manager, you should be paying attention to and learning from. Again, if you've got somebody who wilts when you give them direct feedback, I've had employees who I had to absolutely practically scream in their face the feedback do not do that again because they wouldn't hear me otherwise. And they were perfectly fine. They're okay, got it, and move on. And there are other people who, if I were to have that same kind of approach, they would cry in my office, which, that's just who they are. So as a leader, you have to know, okay, this person likes this kind of feedback. They really prefer it to be face to face. They really, their motive is to learn more about their job. So I should be giving them kinds of things that have them grow and learn in their job. This person over here can only hear me when I'm practically screaming at them. They prefer me to do that in a Zoom call, and their objective is to make as much money as they humanly can. It's like those are components of managing that person that you should take into account when you're talking to that person, when you're giving them goals, when you're trying to figure out what the next step in their career is, you need to take all of that into account. And I have always argued that what you want around the table at your, and I get a lot of heat from people who, don't like DEI or whatever they want to call it, but I find the best teams are made up of a bunch of people around the table with a bunch of different life experiences, with a bunch of different approaches to things. Some people who would look at that thing and go, "Ew, that's ugly," and other people would go, "I love that." That's what you want around your table, is the most possible voices you can have. And as a result, you as a manager have to treat each one of those people as individuals. And so the best managers that I know are people who listen to their employees and pay attention to their signals and understand what their motivating factors are and understand how they like to grow and how they like to get feedback and what kinds of things make them happy and what kinds of things make them really upset. All of that. That's just management, when done well, is an individual sport. It's a one-on-one sport. It's not a team sport. If you end up talking to your people like guys, all of us, as one sort of block of humans, it's almost always going to fall.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we hear a lot from, outside, and then possibly a lot of sort of influencers in this area that say that, okay, yeah, you need to be a leader, you need to just say things, but then eventually, yeah, you're leading a group of people and they are like people, and they are humans, and they have feelings, and they are very different in their perspectives and their life experiences. And that level of understanding how you build that relationship one to one and making sure that the team as whole functions well, I think that's a super important element for the success.
For example, let's just take the recent trend that's been sweeping through the tech world and other worlds now, which is the idea of laying off the poor performers. So Meta's been talking about doing it. A bunch of other companies are talking about, we're going to do a layoff of 5% of the poor performers. Well, that all sounds sort of like, from a stock market perspective, okay, I can kind of sort of see what that means. The problem is it eventually gets down to individuals. And so that means that some manager of some team somewhere is looking at a group of 20 people and having to decide which one of those people leaves. And, sometimes it's really obvious that somebody's been struggling for years and they just can't get it. Okay, fine, that's an easy case. But in many cases, you got a team of really good, solid people who are all doing great work, and to try and call one of them out of there isn't performance-based. It's going to have to be on some rather arbitrary other kind of thing. It all comes down to individual. And who's to say that that person who was the poor performer wouldn't have done much better with some different manager or some different tasks or some different training or some. And so this kind of assuming that you could just sort of take 5% or 10% and lop them off and call it a day, it gets down to individuals at some point. And at that point, the challenge becomes very difficult.
Exactly. Yeah, you mentioned something that I want to hear more from you about the diversity angle, and then you found this sort of the most performing or the best performing type of teams to coming from a sort of more diverse type of thinking. And then what I want to discuss is that, having conflict in the team is not always a bad thing. Having a different ideas, it means that, yeah, you discuss it and then you come up with a sort of a good decision eventually. But where is the balance, and what is the right level of conflict, and what is the sort of is getting too much, or where do you see that is very low, and then people are all like-minded, so this never an innovation is going to happen there. So where are those levels, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the The core thing to remember is that disagreement on a policy or on a product direction or a work-based issue is not a conflict, right? It's just a disagreement about whether we should do this or that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And if it escalates to the level of a conflict, that means that you haven't had a very good discussion around the thing. And even more, though, one of the things that, obviously a red flag is when it starts to get personal. You are the dumbest person I ever saw. You clearly are stupid or whatever. When it starts to get personal, that's no longer a disagreement. That's just wrong, right?
Exactly.
But healthy disagreement in an organization is incredibly important. And in fact, if you look around at the products that have been created, they're almost always created with a very clear vision of what the what the target is, where we're trying to go, what we're trying to accomplish. But you have this incredibly robust set of discussions about the many possible ways to reach that target. You want to. Let me give you a really, really, really old classic example. When AOL was first coming out with their mail product a long time ago. I mean, this is like in the 80s, so it was 50 years ago or whatever. When AOL, I guess that isn't 50, but it's close, was coming out with their mail product, they created a bunch of icons on the screen, and one of the icon for mail was the round top cylindrical mailbox with the red flag that it was popular in the rural United States. And so they then, in the United States, everybody pretty much knew, I see, that is a mailbox, because that's what mailboxes looked like in the rural United States. The problem is, when you took that to Europe, nobody had ever seen one of those things before. And you took it to Japan, and they've got mail slots. And you take it, it's just, that's not at all what mail looks like in the rest of the world. And so they would take it to their first forays into the European market. Clients or customers had absolutely no idea what that mailbox was. Now, you would think that AOL, being smart people, would have had Europeans on their team if they were going to try and sell a product in Europe. But they didn't. They only had US engineers, and so everybody thought, well, that's obviously a mailbox, right? So that's just an incredibly tiny and small example of how, for example, you should not be trying to sell products to women without any women on your team, right? That just makes it's just obvious sense, right? But it goes all beyond that. And one of the things I like to suggest is look around the table at the room and try and think of life experiences in the people who are there. I don't necessarily care about skin color or religion or any of that. Just look at life experience. What kind of life experience has that person had? And if they have all had the same kind of life experience, for example, they all were, are relatively middle-class white men who all went to college, right? All of a sudden, you can almost predict what their life experience looked like, and you're highly unlikely to get separate and distinct opinions from those people because they've had this fairly narrow range of life experience. So I just sort of try and imagine what life experience looks like, and what you will find is when you go to have this conversation about what should we do next or whatever, sometimes you'll get somebody who sees it from a completely different perspective than you ever saw. Exactly. And so this isn't necessarily about, we can get into all the argument you want about whether DEI is the right approach and whether or not we should have quotas and hiring, whatever. I just think as an individual manager who's trying to build a strong team, you should look around that table and try and say to yourself, do I have enough varied life experience around this table to give me perspectives that I'm unlikely to have?
Exactly. Yes, I love it. I love what I'm hearing. And I think your point that I repeat myself, what I sort of hear from you is that to have a good level, healthy disagreements about the topic, that's a good thing to have in the team. And then this sort of, and maybe a modern interpretation of this diversity is like to look at the life experiences. I like that a lot as well. Because apart from whatever sort of gender, color, or religion that we have, I think we are coming from a very sort of different type of life experiences. Someone lived in the abroad for some years, or someone who has experienced smaller or bigger corporates world. I think those type of
And
diversities makes much more sense in my
yep.
view.
And I mean, international, having been in different cultures, different worlds, different organizations, different size of organizations, people who live in the city, people who grew up in rural parts of the country, people who I'm a huge believer, and we were actually pretty good at it at Microsoft, even back in the 90s, of hiring people who did not have computer science degrees.
Mm,
Many of our program managers were people who had philosophy degrees or that kind
exactly.
of thing, because they just brought a different perspective that the computer scientists didn't have. I think when you are trying to build, the other thing you will find when you build a strong team is that it has all these varied life experiences, is that when success happens in those, and I've seen a bunch of success, when success happens in those kinds of teams, it is so much more fulfilling and so much more robust if a bunch of people with a bunch of different life experiences all share that success. It's a completely different kind of celebration of success when it's a whole bunch of different people who can experience and celebrate that success. So I've seen amazing teams get built from just sort of almost random parts out of the parts bin that had no reason to be as successful as they were, but the team chemistry, the team collaboration, often caused by this diverse set of opinions and diverse life experiences, creates an amazing chemistry.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that interpretation with the diverse life experiences, I think that's the way that we probably need to rethink about more sort of the NI topic that we've been discussing so
Yeah.
long in our sort of industries, basically. Yeah, I can't enjoy more talking with you, Chris. I think I myself learn a lot, and I'm sure that my audience sort of will learn a lot from you. So I think I really recommend everyone listening to this follow Chris on TikTok, whatever, or Instagram and LinkedIn. I think you will find a lot of sort of those invaluable experiences that he takes his invaluable time to bring it to the videos and discuss it with you. And then obviously, I think getting his support on coaching would be invaluable for whoever wants to push, to have push in their sort of career, basically.
Well, Adam, thank you so very much. And just Chris Williams happens to be one of the most common names in the English speaking world. So if you're looking for me, it's CLWill, CLWill. My middle initial is L, so it's CLWill. And you can find me at CLWill.com or search on any social media for CLWill, and you'll find me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Threads and Blue Sky and TikTok and LinkedIn and YouTube and all of them.
Great, great work. Again, thanks a lot, Chris, for your time. Thanks for the time and then the insights that you shared with us. And thanks for all of you listening to us today as well. So my name is Adam Karnama, and I will be back with the next sessions of my podcast soon as well.